Good morning, everyone. Here we are again, day one of RSA Conference 2024. We're recording live from Broadcast Alley in Moscone West, and I'm your host, Bill Brenner, and I am joined today by my friend, colleague, Todd Fitzgerald, VP of Cybersecurity Strategy for the Cyber Risk Collaborative. How are you?
Good. Good to be here.
So we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about CISO Stories, which, it started with your podcast, but it's expanded into a larger program that involves webcasts, that involves other types of content. But let's start with the basics. Talk about the format, how it began,
Sure. Absolutely.
what that end goal was when you came up with the idea.
Absolutely. So, a few years ago, I authored this book called the CISO COMPASS, which is meant to be a guide for chief security officers, which is sold very well. Best-selling book each of the last 5 years by my publisher. And in that book, we had 75 different CISOs and industry leaders that contributed a gray box to that on a different issue. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to do a podcast and do like a deeper dive to supplement the book of 20 to 25 minutes, something somebody could listen to in their workout. And so then we expanded it. So we interviewed most of the people in the book, and then we moved on from there. And today we're in almost 175 episodes of CISO Stories, bringing the knowledge of CISOs and industry leaders that are actually doing this work on a whole variety of different issues.
Mm-hmm. Now, talk about how long has it been since it started?
It's been almost 4 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talk about some of your, so many guests, so many episodes, but among that body of work, what are some of the interviews that stand out to you?
It's always hard for me because the thing that fascinates me is that we've done so many episodes, and I read somewhere once that most podcasts die by episode number 7. But this one has been successful because it's not about me. It's about the guests that we bring on. And so I've had a large network, and so I contact those people, and then now with the Cyber Risk Alliance and the 1,200 CISOs that are involved in that, we tap into that brain trust. So each of us knows something different. And no matter what CISO you are, you can't know everything about security. So I can bring those people forward. One of our first guests was Steve Katz, who was the first CISO, and it was an honor to interview Steve and get his insights. He talked about when you're in the boardroom, for example, and you're presenting your case, that if the board doesn't understand it, then you were too incompetent to explain it. Those were his words. And his point being that they're all smart people. And so as CISOs, we have to be able to do that. And then I interviewed Ed Amoroso, who is the CISO for AT&T. And he had a perspective about he expects the board to educate themselves on cyber, and which is a different viewpoint than a lot of people have. But we've interviewed people across risk, Doug Hubbard and Jack Jones that have written books on how to do risk. This past year, I believe it could have actually been the first podcast, but it was one of the first ones after Joe Sullivan, who is the CISO for Uber, after his felony conviction. We gave him an extended time, and we did that on video, since we started also having this on video. And he talked about his case and the implications for CISOs. And then we've also interviewed Tim Brown from SolarWinds. So we try to bring people that are in the news their perspectives on issues, and they're more than happy to do it.
So, I'm glad you brought up the Uber interview because, I've been in the security industry for 20 years. You've been in it longer.
Mm-hmm.
Life for a CISO is much different today than it was back in the early 2000s, and now CISOs have to worry about the personal liability if there are successful attacks and whatnot. So, talk about how you've seen that change over the years, and what you think of the current kind of state of life as a CISO.
I, I put together this model, and I documented that in the CISO Compass book, but it was called the evolution of the CISO, and there's 6 phases since 1995 that we've gone through. And what's interesting about that is that each one of those phases brought different skill sets that the CISOs have had to have. So it started off as very technical, and then we moved into a compliance era, and then we shifted to a risk era, and then just when we figured we had all that figured out, then we had iPhones and the cloud and moving the data everywhere, and then privacy became a big concern. So, in fact, we just published a new book last November called The Privacy Leader Compass, and we've had some of those people that contributed to that on the show as well. And now I've come up with this 6th phase called the Business Resilient Supply Chain CISO, which really has 2 concepts in it that we're really risk managing to be business resilient. At the same time, we can't just look at our own companies anymore. We really have to look all throughout that supply chain. And in a couple months ago, we had people talking about that supply chain and how to secure that.
Yep. So, what are you going to be doing in your session? First, talk about your session this
Sure.
week.
Well,
Let's start there.
I thought it'd be kind of fun, since we have all these CISOs with all these perspectives, is I've got a drum, and it's going to be like a lottery game. And I have 200 balls, and I'm going to spin the drum and randomly draw out a CISO, a podcast, and then throw up multiple choice questions. And then the audience will use their smartphones to answer those questions based on what the podcast is. And then I will give the answer, and then we'll give the beginning little short clip from the CISO themselves about what they talked about, and then I'll share my perspective on that issue, and then we'll move to the next one. And you also may get some very valuable prizes in that session as well.
Very good. And I have to ask this question because I think it's not always apparent for everyone, and that is who this podcast is suited for. It's CISO Stories, but I think the thing that gets lost sometimes is it's for everyone working for the CISO, people who are on that path to becoming a CISO.
Absolutely. It's a great development tool for that next layer that's wants to become the CISO and needs to broaden out their knowledge, but it's also good for a deep dive in the team, because we're talking about all these issues. If we're talking about identity and access management, for example, and you're in identity and access management, this gives you a perspective from a CISO as to what's going on. And we're talking to some CISOs that are running some of our largest companies, and also some of our smaller companies. So we try to have a really good mix so that it's really across the whole security team. But we've started with the CISO. We also do this with people that are practitioner CISOs that are working in the industry. They're solving problems. So I try to take the theoretical stuff out of it And let's drill into specifics.
Yep.
What do I do? What does this make me do on my job?
So I do want to mention, and I mentioned this at the beginning, the expansion of CISO Stories as a program. And, as one of the folks behind the scenes, I'm proud of how this has evolved. And in addition to your podcast episodes, we have the webcasts, we have related ebooks, related infographics, and I just wanted to throw out there to the audience, if you go onto the SC Media homepage, up at the top, far left, you'll see it says CISO Stories. You click on that, and you'll get to see all of that content.
I think that's wonderful. This started off with the podcast, but I see all the content, and what I love about that as a person who's been a CISO for a couple decades, that this is the kind of stuff all in one place that you can get. You can get stuff from technology vendors, but you're also getting the work groups in the Cybersecurity Collaborative where CISOs have put together documents on how to solve problems. For example, we had a group that put together people that were having problems with account takeovers and credential stuffing. And a group of 11 or 12 CISOs got together of some of our largest companies to our largest retail companies and tried to figure this out of, okay, what things are people doing, what processes are we using, what technology and tools, without really recommending technology and tools, but giving a perspective on, this is what we found when we use this technology, this is what we found when we use that technology, and then putting all that knowledge together in a report that's available to the community. And I think what it does is it democratizes security. It makes it available. So if somebody at McDonald's has hired some consultants and has done something, they sanitize that information and then make it available to the person who's working at the smaller firm that doesn't have those kind of resources but can still leverage that. And so I think it's great. And then all the market research that CRA puts together around that, I think it's great because it's sticking it all together.
Mm-hmm. So, good luck with your session. Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. For the audience, just a note, if you want to stay on top of the content that we're bringing you from the conference, you can do that at securityweekly.com/RSAC. And thanks for being with me, and we'll be back.
Thank you.